Okay, I'm going to shoot a quick video here about the problems facing San Francisco because I've been getting asked. I try to just do videos now when people ask me a bunch of questions. Once I reach a critical point, which is about 20 or 30 people, I'll make a video of it. So the state of California has all kinds of problems. I won't get into the social issues and their bankruptcy issues, but there's a story in... you may recall the Sword of Damocles. Damocles was a court official, and he questioned the king about how easy the king had it. And the king said, well, Damocles, I'll switch places with you. And so there was he sat in the throne, and he noticed during the dinner while everybody was praising him and everything that there was a sword hanging by a thread over him. That's where you get the term the Sword of Damocles. And of course, Damocles didn't want anything to do with the throne after that. And that's a pretty interesting story, so you should check that out by itself. But anyway, this video is going to be about the Sword of Damocles hanging over California. California's got two major problems coming up on it, and they're related. Obviously, there's the big earthquake problem that could happen anytime now with the new, the Hayward Fault and the San Andreas Fault, and the new one they found that goes right through Los Angeles, which could trigger the second sword, which I'm going to talk about. But the first sword is Fukashima. Now, if you look here, obviously California has an enormously long coastline. All that coastline is now has been contaminated and will continue to increase contamination from the Fukashima meltdown in April few years ago. So I want you to go check some stuff out. Tokyo playground radiation, which is showing how much radiation left Fukushima. It basically contaminated all of Japan all the way down to the mountain range there by Yokohama. But Tokyo is all contaminated, and you don't have to speak Japanese. There's tons of these videos out there. And then Half Moon Bay is in Northern California, and it's already been contaminated. Now they've tried to come out with some other things saying it's just normal background, but that's not it. And then just punch in on the YouTube Pacific Ocean Fukushima, you'll get anything you want. Some other things I want you to check out: the USS Pandemonium, Treasure Island. Now Treasure Island used to be a naval base, and they turned it over, and it's got condominiums and stuff built on it. But at the time, or back in the day, the Navy had a mock-up ship there called the Pandemonium, which they irradiated and trained to clean it up. Well, there's just radiation all over Treasure Island, and it's going to bite people in the butt there too. So basically, the seaward side of California is going to be contaminated approximately 100 yards in, with storm surges, and then the kelp beds are already contaminated. They already have, and the kelp beds are the basis of the ecosystem off the coast there. So the animals will eat it. They'll wash up on shore. The birds will kill and eat fish that are feeding off the stuff and feed off the kelp. Fish will bring the carcasses in. The birds will bring the carcasses in, drop them in further inshore. The birds themselves will die probably inshore. And the contamination from storm surges will eventually get about 100 yards in. Now, this is a little mock-up of San Francisco. The buildings are obviously not to scale, but this is the most expensive real estate in California. Is right around the San Francisco Bay Area. And here's a longer shot of. And San Francisco Bay is a lot bigger than you think it is. If you see it, it comes in and it goes all the way up here. Look it up on a map. And all this water is very, very mildly radioactive now, but Fukushima is going to go on basically forever. For all intents and purposes, it's going to last. The strontium-90 doesn't break down for 90 years. And the plutonium never breaks down, really, for all intents and purposes. Now, most of the plutonium is over in Japan. The cesium, the radioactive cesium, that went basically around the world. So that's already where it's going to be. But the water, the plant's leaking water constantly. And like I said, there's been a thing called the China syndrome. That's one of the terms I want you to look up, where the spent nuclear fuel actually went through the containment. It's actually in the ground. There's no technology to get that out of the ground. It's just going to be there forever. They tried to create an ice wall. Now, I was on this from like day one. Nobody listened to me, but now finally it's starting to make it. And there's a gag order. But the problem San Francisco is going to face, so like I said, the whole coast is going to go about 100 yards. 100 yards in on the whole coast is going to get contaminated eventually. Okay. Now there is a caveat to that up in the state of Washington, with the Columbia River, where Seattle, the Tacoma area, that big giant water basin, because of the overpressure from the fresh water coming out of the Columbia, it's gonna spare about 10 miles on each side of that giant outlet there, because you can actually taste fresh water quite a ways away out in there. So that's going to be the bright spot of the West Coast, is going to be the Seattle area. The rest of it, the seaward side, is going to go in easily 100 yards is going to be contaminated. Now about 100 feet is going to be contaminated all along here. Now obviously the exchange rate isn't as great as because the outlet isn't that big, but I mean it's just going to be day after day, and every time there's a tide, it's like a bellows pumping back and forth. But the other thing I want to talk about is the infrastructure problem. The dike system for California, all the people that live in the LA basin, which is in the area around, is about 26 million. Okay. And they get all their water from Northern California. There's really, remember the Lakers were a team that moved from Minnesota because of financial problems. The only lakes in Southern California are actually just reservoirs to store water, and they've got about 45 days when it's full, and it's full now. And they have these iron gates that can come down and stop salt water from coming in. But after that 45-day period ends, there's no more water. They have to, ship all that stuff in, and it's not going to be a pleasant thing. You're going to have to move. You're not going to have to move everybody, but you're going to have to move several million people. Are going to lose their jobs, and it's going to crush what's left of the California economy. And like I said, California has two main exports: technology and food. Food is by far where they make the most. Next time you go to the store, just notice all the food from California. Now, the United States is not going to starve if California stops food production because of this dike failure system to get the water from Northern California, mainly through the San Joaquin Valley and the Imperial Valley. That's where most of the produce. There's specifically about 28 little islands that are surrounded by. They're actually slightly below sea level, and these dikes protect them. And the water is it's the most lush, fertile land basically in the United States. And some of these dikes are 150 years old, and there's no money to fix them. So anyway, the water system comes down, and it goes right next to the San Francisco Bay Area. And it's also vulnerable up there near the Sacramento River. And the San Jacinto River. The Sacramento River is kind of raging. It's the more powerful of the two rivers. Anyway, as you go down, and you can, I don't recommend punching in dike failures in California because you'll get all kinds of weird stuff. But check, it's the biggest infrastructure problem in the United States is this dike system. And it could go because of three things. An earthquake could cause it. Tidal surges could cause these dikes to give way. And snow melt. Now, if you'll notice this last summer, well, not this last summer, maybe 2 months ago, and this is April, so remember the snow melt and that dam that almost failed. Remember, it tore up the spillway, and they thought the dam was going to fail. That could cause these this infrastructure problem to happen. Like I said, if it happens, it'll be catastrophic. You'll have to move more people than have moved in human history at once. Like I said, they've got these iron gates that'll come down and it'll buy you 45 days, but you're gonna have to do something pretty fast. So anyway, oh, and here's an older picture of San Francisco Bay. And as you can see, compared to the modern shoreline, they've added a lot of stuff. And here's the difference between there and there. So they've added stuff. Point I want to make about the old map compared to the new map. Generally, the stuff that they've added on isn't as, let's say, permanent as the new stuff. So, well, there's Alcatraz. Forgot about Alcatraz. I got there. Anyway, so they got problems. The first 100 feet inside is going to get contaminated. Now, that's Fisherman's Wharf. That's all kinds of high-end dollar items that are going to be useless. So anyway, I'd like for you to check out these things. This is the homework assignment. So Tokyo Playground radiation, Half Moon Bay radiation. There's several. They've got some disinformation there, so look around. Fukushima, the Pandemonium, Treasure Island, the China Syndrome, spent fuel pools, the new Chernobyl sarcophagus. Check out timbosplace.com. Like I said, I've got a map of radiation contamination on page 1. It's updated every day. And remember the Sword of Damocles. And thank you very much for your consideration. I'm out. Oh, I forgot. I got to thank, I got some more security here. Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock has been providing security for this. He's also the science officer. This is my German pincher, Mr. Spock. He's an old guy now. He just turned 15. So thank you. Say goodbye, Mr. Spock. Okay.